Hey, this is Brooks with Character Design Forge. I wanted to address what is probably the most frequently asked question that I get either on a weekly basis or I see it asked under other artists' videos and posts. And I want to define the problem really quickly and then also give you the solution because it's rather simple. And the solution is in two parts, really. So this is something that I want to call blank page syndrome. Now, the question usually goes like this. I want to be drawing, I want to be creating, but every time I sit down to draw, I don't know what to draw. And it's almost always worded either in one of two ways, and I know they don't necessarily mean this, but it's either how do I get my ideas, or it's almost worded in a way where it's asking the artist or someone to tell them what to draw, which is interesting. I'm not actually sure that that's what's meant by it, but it comes off that way. So not having ideas, that might be something that we've all come across from time to time, but maybe you're experiencing it chronically. So the solution to this is actually a rather simple concept, and it's that you're not taking dictation from yourself. Now, taking dictation is a phrase that you might be familiar with from either Siri or any other app that takes audio that you speak and translates it into text so that you don't have to type it out. And before we had apps, taking dictation really was the job of a secretary. So in this situation, you have someone like an executive who has the idea for something, who speaks the words out loud, but then the person who's actually typing them up is the secretary. Those words still belong to the executive, but the work is being done by this second person. What happens with blank page syndrome is that you're sitting down to a blank page and you're trying to do the work of the executive and the secretary all at the same time. You're trying to generate the idea for something in the moment that you actually need to be putting it down. So in order to cure yourself of this blank page syndrome, you should never be sitting down to draw while simultaneously wondering what it is that you need to be drawing. If you know you have time during the day that you have set aside to draw, or the inverse of that, some time that you know that you won't be able to, like at your job or at school, why not take that time to generate ideas? I know that for me, I always have something that I can be drawing when I sit down to because of 3 separate notes that I keep. I keep in the Notes app on my phone, I have 3 different files. One of them is my freelance work, of course, that's something I need to get done. The other is original ideas of my own. And the third is fan art, things that I've observed and things that I like that I want to create art of myself. Now, because I do this, because I'm thinking about what I would like to be creating as far as art outside of the time that I actually create art, I've never really had this blank page syndrome myself. And I don't mean that to brag, I just mean to say that this works. Thinking about it outside and writing it down so you don't forget an idea later, it really helps you a lot. Now, I mentioned that there's a second part of this problem, and it might not be as easy to solve, and it might be a little bit more nuanced, but if you feel like you don't have anything to draw, or basically in that situation, and if I'm not misreading this, where people are asking what they should draw, it kind of comes down to not having something to say. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in that situation of an executive and a secretary, well, the secretary might not have opinions that the executive does, but those ideas of his are what's important, and that's what's getting transcribed into a letter or a document. So for you, do you have something to say? That's sort of the first part of this. Do you have a story that you'd like to share? Is it something that you've created, a fantasy world that you've created, a set of characters that you really like? A personal story of your own that you'd like to retell? Do you have opinions about something? Is it even something where you have a stance on something that you'd like to create art about? All of those things make up things that you want to say. They make up a voice. It's your own personal expression. Now, if you don't necessarily have anything to say, that's completely fine. Either one, you're younger or you haven't experienced much yet, and that voice will develop over time, and don't rush things. Or you're like a lot of different artists that I've seen, even good friends who are very technically good artists, but don't necessarily have a voice or something that they want to say, and that's fine. It works out well for you guys because there are plenty of positions within companies where art directors will feed ideas to these artists. It's that same executive secretary dictation, and you don't care what it is you're making as long as you're making it, and that's great. But in the meantime, since you don't have someone feeding you those ideas, there has to be something that you care about. There must be something that you love, a show, a game, a comic, and in that situation, fan art is a really good way to start creating. No matter what, have some ideas set aside, record some things ahead of time before you start drawing, that way you have something to work from. That's it for me today. I'm making new videos every week at Character Design Forge. Subscribing on YouTube lets you know when new videos are made available. My course, Learn Character Design, tons of students have gone through this, have loved it, have benefited from it. It's a comprehensive character design education. Head over to learncharacterdesign.com to find out more. If this or any of my videos have educated you or entertained you, please consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you for watching, and have fun creating.